Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Winter 24 Highlights webinar from BrightGen, the latest in our long line of our world-famous Salesforce release webinars. I'm your host, flying solo again, Keir Bowden, CTO. You can connect with me on X, formerly known as Twitter, or on LinkedIn on the socials at the link shown there. Lots to get through today, so I'm not going to hang around waiting for stragglers. Everybody gets sent a copy of the recording anyway, as I check that I'm recording, and I am, so that's good. So without further ado, I'm going to crack on with it. Okay, so these are the topics that we'll be covering today. You can all read them as well as I can. So without further ado, I'm going to get started on the content. As is traditional, we'll be starting with fond farewells as older features hit the retirement home to go and be with Clive, who used to host these webinars with me. And in the interests of full transparency, all of the images you see on the section level slides, such as this handsome chap waving off a train here, AI generated and created by Stable Diffusion based on prompts that I supplied. There's a few account features that are being turned off in this release. News, automated account fields, and logo field population and logos. This is being turned off on October the 13th, so a couple of days to go. I haven't seen any explanation as to why this is, but if I had to guess, I'd say this is the kind of thing that Einstein will soon be handling through AI, and it won't just be limited to specific fields and the like. Einstein account and opportunity insights are going shortly afterwards, November the 14th, just over a month's time. So Salesforce are going to be focusing on pipeline inspection and opportunity relationship insights for that area of functionality. Meeting Studio is going in the spring 24 release. This hasn't been around very long. It was introduced during the pandemic. Clearly not seeing a lot of use now. So the advice is to use third-party meeting tools such as Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, all those kind of things. And social accounts, contacts, and leads are also going. The advice here is to look for a replacement on the App Exchange, so it doesn't look like there's anything coming through from Salesforce to help on that front. There's clearly a lot of retirements coming because we don't normally need a second slide, but here we are. Salesforce for Outlook, that goes in June 2024 in around 9 months as part of the, I guess that'll be the summer 24 release. Move to Einstein Activity Capture or Outlook integration. This has been announced for a while now, so you should have had plenty of time to move. Salesforce Functions, this came out of left field a month or two ago. This is retiring in a little over a year. It's very short-lived. It feels to me like it spent longer in beta than it did in GA. The advice is to migrate your apps to Heroku, or I guess another hosting platform that's similar. But obviously you'll need to handle all the authentication and integration, etc. yourselves. Farewell Functions. APIs 21 to 30. These are retiring in summer 25, so this has been pushed back a year or two to give you more time to prepare. The Get Salesforce base URL method is retiring as part of this release. If you attempt to use it with a later API version than 59, it will error. If you haven't used this before, it's one of the ways you can get the hold of the URL of the Salesforce instance you're connected to. So we used it an awful lot in the past to create links to be used externally or when creating emails through Apex. But the two methods shown, get org domain URL and get current request URL, they do much the same depending on exactly what you need. And Apex autocomplete in the developer console is going. According to Salesforce, this is no longer sustainable due to its resource intensity, but it is still going to be available for custom classes and objects. I can definitely understand that because the developer console is entirely custom. It's not something like VS Code where there's a full-featured code editor provided by someone else and you just extend it through plugins. But if you need auto-completion, switch to VS Code. Moving on to some general updates and another fine picture, I'm sure you'll all agree. As is traditional again, we start with the browser compatibility, which is the same as always, to be honest. This is pretty much the same pattern each time. Latest Edge Chromium, Chrome, Firefox or Safari, except on the iPad, which is Safari only because it's an Apple device. And Classic Console is the other difference because that doesn't support Safari. So one is Safari only, one doesn't support Safari, all evens out in the end. And next we have something else that's fast becoming a tradition, the latest news on mandatory multi-factor authentication. So everyone should know by now, because it's been, I don't know, a couple of years now, can't be far off a couple of years anyway. MFA is required and is being automatically enabled in all orgs, but this hasn't hit everyone yet. Should be complete by the spring release of next February. Once it's complete, the release after that, the summer 24 release, Salesforce will start enforcing this. Note that if your org is behind a single sign-on solution, MFA is contractually required, but it isn't checked. It's a Scout's honor type of thing. Another topic we've heard a lot about over the years, Lightning Experience Performing is improving once again. So all Lightning Web Component enabled objects, which appears to be about 80% of them, will render their record home pages and their related list view all via Lightning Web Components rather than Aura. And apparently this will lead to up to 40% improvement. You can read more about that at the short link shown. Obviously we share the deck, so you don't need to worry about capturing that now. I would just say I find it remarkable that we're still talking about the performance of Lightning Experience and how it needs to be improved after what, 7 or 8 years of the platform. So clearly it's not something that Salesforce have been overly prioritizing. And a few more general changes. There's a new setup domain coming. So if you use allow lists, add the domain shown here. So I think this is, you may have noticed if you run in incognito menu, windows and things, that some aspects of setup won't load because cross-domain pages have been blocked and that kind of thing. So I think everything will start coming out of a single domain, and everything will work seamlessly going forward. And hopefully it means setup is finally getting some love as well, rather than being the poor relation to the Lightning experience. There's improved color contrasts to adhere to the web content accessibility guidelines. You can now choose to disable keyboard shortcuts. The reason for that you might want to do it is they can interfere with screen readers. And finally, you can choose whether passwords for content deliveries are enabled by default, or if you want to choose that for each delivery that you create. Analytics is our next topic, and if you're worried that AI is going to rule the world, just check out the fingers here on the user's hands and ask yourself if you've ever seen fingers like that before. You can now view some of the metadata for a dashboard using the new details option on the drop-down menu that you can see at the bottom of the screenshot here. And when you click on that, you'll see the created and last modified information as shown here for my test dashboard in my pre-release org. Hopefully there's a bit more information coming on in that area going forward. Lightning Report Builder now has feature parity with Classic when you're building summary formulas that include parent or prev group val. So when you fill in the display section, the image will update to show you how it'll be used, give you a kind of preview of it. And when you're happy with that, you can choose the parameters and edit the function to configure the formula. In the Analytics tab on the console, you can now open multiple report and dashboard tabs. So previously you were limited to one and the content just got created. Now you can have as many as you want. Customization next. Some really nice improvements around permission sets, for which we should all be thankful to Cheryl Feldman, who's the product manager in that area and is doing a sterling job. So you can select and deselect all fields. This is in bold because I think it's awesome. All fields when applying a permission. So just use the boxes next to the read access or edit access, and that will select everything or deselect everything. I think this is going to save millions, if not billions, of clicks and shorten the war by 4 years. Obviously, we always have to say that. But I used this week, and I had to enable, when I was doing some data cloud learning, and I had to enable a couple of hundred fields across 4 objects, and it's way faster just clicking this. So I'm really, really pleased to see that. You can also see field API names, so you'll notice that next to the field name. This is really useful if you've got more than one name with the same name, one field rather with the same name. Might seem a bit odd that you would do that, but this happens more often than you might expect when you've got a number of managed packages installed, and they happen to have the same names as ones you've already chosen for some of your objects. You can now report on permission set and permission set group assignments and see how many permission set groups a permission set is added to. So this helps you understand the impact. You think you're going to make a small change, but actually that permission set is used in 17 different groups, is going to hit an enormous number of users. And finally, on permission sets, you can troubleshoot group errors. So when you access a permission set group record, the last actionable error will be displayed. And you can also, if the group is in a failed status, you can recalculate it manually rather than as you used to do, which was to make a change and then undo that change so that it forced the recalculation. Moving on to Lightning App Builder. Dynamic forms are a step closer to being everywhere. So these are now supported on most. It doesn't really clarify more than that. It is just most Lightning Web Component enabled standard objects. So not all standard objects are Lightning Web Component enabled. Campaigns, products, tasks, for example. And even if they are, like notes, they might not be supported. Don't know why, just not supported. And dynamic forms are also GA on mobile, and that's all dynamic form supported objects. But you do have to go and enable that on mobile for some reason. I'm guessing it needs to do some rebuilding of your page layouts or something, which might take a little while. Next is sharing. You can now report on account sharing, so you can see which accounts have been shared using account teams or via manual shares, which users and groups actually have access to that account. In order to do this, you need to create a custom report type on the account share object, so that report type isn't provided by default. And similarly for public groups, you can see the users, groups and roles that have been added. And again, you need to create a custom report type, but this time it's on the group member object. Mass quick actions on related lists of GA. This is a feature we've been asking for years. It's a bit more limited than we'd like at the moment, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. So your reminder, this is only for creating and updating records. So you choose your records using the checkboxes, pick the action, which is update contact in this case, set the field value, and then perform the update, and it tells you that it's updated those two records. Next, my favorite topic, development, and look at that fine hat that developer's wearing. Again, no idea where that came from on the prompt. It wasn't something that I asked for, but hey ho. Dynamic Lightning Web Components. So anyone that's used Aura probably remembers that you could dynamically instantiate Aura components, and after we'd all been using it for about 3 years, they said, oh, you should never do that because it really hits performance. And it's now available for Lightning Web Components, interestingly. What it allows you to do is instantiate components on demand, so in response to a user action, for example. So what this means is if you've got a conditionally rendered heavyweight component, if the user never takes the action to use it, you don't have to load it. You can just create that dynamically. But they say it does come with a performance penalty, so the recommendation is not to overuse it. Again, no clarity on what overusing it means. I guess if you're using it and you find that things are getting slow, you might want to consider whether it's worth pulling that heavyweight component in every case. Some feature parity with other aspects of the platform now. Component versions, so the version in your meta XML file, they will now affect component behavior from API 58 onwards. So if you've got a Lightning Web component and your API version is set to 58, you will just get the behavior appropriate for that API version without anything that was introduced in 59, for example. If you set the version later than the API version of the org, so 59 is winter 24, if you set it to 60, you would just get the current release. It wouldn't error, it just flip, you just get current release functionality. The refresh view API, which allows you to programmatically trigger a refresh of components, which was introduced, I think, in the last release. This now works with the locker service. So you don't need to enable Lightning Web Security. And if you can't use Lightning Web Security for whatever reason, you can still use the refresh view API. And finally, in API version 59, the HTML validation is getting stricter. So things which were previously warnings in API 58 in summer 23 are now going to be errors. But as you've seen, you've got component level versioning, so you could flip them down to 58 to get over those errors, but that does mean you miss out on any API 59 functionality. Moving on to Apex. So a little bit of code in here just for the developers. The rest of you can feel free to ignore it, cover your eyes. You can now set the maximum depth of queuable jobs, overriding, this is really in developer and Scratch orgs, where you've got limits around how far you can go down. So you can choose to change that when you're queuing a job. But reminder that all other limits still apply. So it's not like you're going to, it's not like it's kind of opening up the floodgates and you can do whatever you want. If you go down too far, then you might run into other issues. A new feature that I really like, avoiding queuing duplicate jobs by generating a unique signature when you pass that through, and which you pass through on the option. So when you queue the job, you create your unique signature. So you can see here on the options, I've set the duplicate signature value to be my user ID plus the name my queuable of my queuable. So what that means is when I try and in-queue that, if there's already a job in-queued, this is, I don't know, down to user interaction or somebody pressing a particular button or something, and that's already actually happened, then if they do it again at some point in time later and that job is already in queued, it hasn't run yet, this stops a duplicate one being in queued that would presumably run and do nothing. You don't have to use this, but this is there if you only ever want a single instance, if you need a singleton type of pattern on that. And you will receive an exception, so you'll need to handle that. There's a new comparator interface. I really like this one to help with list sorting. So essentially, rather than having to wrap the members of your list in a class which implements comparable, you can just create a comparator, a class that implements comparator, and pass that to the sort method. You can find out more at my blog at the short link shown, where I go into quite a lot of detail about how this works. In my testing, it saved about 20% of the CPU time that was being consumed by sorting lists within a transaction. So well worth having, I would say. And also you can now use for loops with iterables. You used to be able to do this with arrays, but for iterables you had to convert them into arrays and then do something with them. So this again, a nice little productivity improvement. Couple of sandbox changes to talk about. First one again, I think is released. There's some nice features in this release, some features that are relatively small but really nice improvements. So what this allows you to do is create a public group in your production org, and then when you create a sandbox, the members of that group are able to log in. So they're not frozen, they don't have their email addresses changed, they can literally just use their username for that sandbox and they'll be able to log straight in. So the way it used to work was you had a single admin user. When you created it, you were the one that could log in, then you had to go and enable everybody else. So if you're creating a sandbox for a particular purpose, you'll be able to have a list of users that are already enabled. What I don't know is if you'll be able to have multiple different groups and you'll be able to choose the group, etc. I haven't gone in, I don't think I've seen any details to that level, but that would be really nice if you could have your list of developers, your list of marketers, your list of this, that, and the other. I want to create a sandbox for them to do some work in, and they'll automatically all get access to it, and everybody else will be locked out. That sounds ideal. But anyway, yeah, so that's what will happen there. And if you've somehow exceeded your sandbox license limit, I have no idea how this happens. I've never really successfully exceeded much in the way of Salesforce limits apart from CPU time, which is a soft limit anyway. But if you haven't used them, any that exceed, they'll be locked. So you need to free up space. If this happens to you, you need to free up space by either deleting the other sandboxes that you don't need, or purchasing more licenses. If you don't do anything, they'll be deleted after 60 days and you cannot get them back. A slightly esoteric change here, which I don't think will affect many people, but it might be if you've got some code in there that for whatever reason is relying on knowing where the object is actually stored. So there's a change to how object IDs are structured. So the server, the Salesforce instance ID, used to be encoded as 2 characters, the 4th and the 5th character in the ID. So this is now being increased to 3 characters, presumably, I'm guessing, because they're approaching 256 instances and they're running out of space. And this will now be the 4th, 5th, and 6th characters in the ID. Existing IDs aren't going to be retrospectively changed. There'll still be 2 characters, and the length of the IDs also won't change. So clearly this was left for future expansion anyway and is now required. This is a release update. It's been around for a little while, so you may even have turned it on, but it's going to be enforced as part of this release. Flow, now there's always a load of flow changes. You get plenty of investment these days. Flow reactive components are generally available. Another nice feature. So basically this means that when a component on a flow screen changes that supports reactive, other components that are also reactive will be notified and can react accordingly. So what this means is that we're moving away from kind of slow and lengthy wizard type flows where you capture a field, move on to the next, capture another field, move on to the next, where there's a lot of dependencies and maybe drop downs, pick lists need to change based on your selection. All of that becomes much more doable within a single page, although not perfectly at the moment because not everything supports reactivity. So this is available for custom Lightning Web components and supported standard components. Now, if you have flows that are on 57 and 58 API version and you think reactive components would be helpful there, you can enable that reactive component support for the next year. So this will work. So basically you opt in, your 57 and 58 versions will work okay until the winter 25 release, at which point in time they will stop and you need to upgrade those to API version 59 or probably up to 62, which is what it will be by then. Continuing with reactive components, if you've used those before, there are some changes from the beta. So you can reference global variables in reactive formulas. Choice components now react to user selections elsewhere. Really pleased about that because choice was something I had to build my own custom version of when I was playing around with this because in the beta it didn't support it. And it's really key to quite a number of use cases. There's a few more formula functions that can be used in reactive screens, as you can see there. And if you're using API 59 or later, your reactive components will update themselves the first time your screen loads, and they will also inform a screen reader of the changes that have taken place. So good useful assistive features there. A few more flow changes, this time around the builder. So you can now create a custom error message element that allows you to provide your own message to the user when things go awry. And a bit like validation rule errors for the admins on the call, you can choose whether you want to display this at the top of the window or on a line against a specific field. HTTP callouts are generally available with new put, patch, and delete methods. So the things that allowed you to send information rather than just requesting, that's now GA. You can provide a description for each key in the message, and the JSON sample validation has been improved from earlier versions. And this final one, another important change, you can now auto-launch flow from data cloud changes. So this is, I don't know if anyone saw at Dreamforce how data cloud is kind of becoming more part of the platform, and it's built on top of the metadata and integrated with the metadata. So this is a good example of how that is in there, because the flow can essentially monitor the metadata or the data around there and get notified that something has happened. The data cloud knows how to kick a flow into life when something important happens, which it never used to be able to do. So this is the new data cloud triggered flow, and it launches on changes to data model objects or calculated insight objects, so not source objects or the like. Couple more on Flow Builder, and again, another small feature, but a really nice step. You can now save a flow before fully configuring the start elements for record trigger flows and the create record elements in all flows. And what's good about this is that it's the first step towards being able to save a draft flow. So rather than having to create a flow and having it all completely fully featured, or at least stand alone before you could save it, you can treat it more like code that I'm partway through. I haven't built out everything. I'm just going to save this and I'll come back to it at some point in time when I'm ready to work on it a bit more. Previously you got errors on savings, whereas now you'll just get a warning. ScreenFlow components now retain their values after state changes. So where the user resumes a paused flow, returns to an earlier screen, or has to deal with an error. Previously what happened is the flow removed any user specified values, but note that you do need to be on API 59 or later in order to see this behavior. And if you're getting records, data cloud objects are now separate to Salesforce objects, so you can be clear about what type of object you're actually trying to retrieve. You can use wait elements in more flows, so they're now supported in scheduled triggered flows, auto-launched, and orchestrations. And this applies to the wait for an amount of time or wait until a specific date elements. And the advanced pause element has been renamed to bring it more in line with the other wait elements, and it's now wait for conditions. Next up, a few enhancements around flow and process management. You can now migrate workflow rules with pending time-based actions to flows. So previously the actions were inactive and deleted, but now they're converted to scheduled paths, which in my view makes this actually usable, because you wouldn't typically want to bin off all your existing time-based actions. They're there for a reason. You can now migrate processes with custom metadata references in formulas over to flows, but bear in mind, once you've done that, you can't go and edit it. So you have to get that right in the first instance. And to help you move all your workflow rules over to flows, the limits around active and total flows for professional, I don't know if anyone on the call has essentials or professional, probably not, but you never know. But these limits are being increased. So this should happen automatically, but if you don't see an improvement and you hit a limit, then talk to Salesforce support. Flow orchestration next. So you can now apply requirements to stages and to steps. So essentially, this is the criteria that must be met to start the step or stop a step or a stage. Got lots of strs there. You can add up to 3 requirements per stage or step. And this is another small but important improvement. Previously, you had to invoke another evaluation flow, which is complexity and effort that we can all do without. And orchestration objects are now available in Object Manager in Setup. So you've got flow orchestration run, flow orchestration step run, and flow orchestration work items. So you can figure those in there nearer to a first-class object. Okay, we're finally through flows. Couple of changes around domains. The enhanced domains release update is being enforced in winter 24. So this impacts all of your URLs that contain your org's my domain name. After this release update, it'll be more stable because the instance names that can change when Salesforce do an org migration, which they do a reasonable amount these days. So those elements, those instance names have been removed. And this should also avoid third-party cookie blocking. Now you control redirects around this through the My Domains redirection settings in Setup. And if you have public URLs that people rely on, then you should enable and test this in a sandbox, because it's coming. There will be automatic redirection of non-enhanced host names, and any orgs that were provisioned before October 2020, also known as the Winter 21 release, will also redirect if the My Domain name is missing from the URL. This is another temporary fix and will stop in a year's time. So if you notice this happening, you need to get on top of it. There are some Einstein Generative AI features in this release on the sales and service side. I think most, if not all of these, actually went GA slightly before Dreamforce and before this release. And I'm expecting more kind of out of release cycle functionality to appear on the generative AI side of things in the short to mid-term, just because everything's moving so quickly in this space. I don't think Salesforce will be waiting 3-4 months for the next release before pushing something out if it's ready. So for sales, there are call summaries from recordings, which are currently limited to English language calls that include a transcript. So it sounds more to me like the recording is incidental and it's all being done off the transcript, but that could just be me being cynical. And then there's personalized sales emails and product information in sales emails that allow you to generate emails that hopefully prospects and customers will be interested in based on predefined prompts from Salesforce. So you've got no prompt builder capability just yet. There's 5 predefined prompts and you can choose from those. And on the service side, there are service replies, which is where you receive AI generated replies, suggestions, but grounded in your data, either based on existing knowledge articles, in which case they'll appear in the knowledge section, or in the context of the chat, in which case they'll appear in the context section. And work summaries will populate case fields that you define based on the content of a chat conversation, and this defaults to the summary, issue, and resolution fields, but you can reconfigure that. I'm not going to go into a huge amount more on Einstein Generative AI because you can be able to find out more about that at our next Get AI Ready webinar, which is on the 25th of October, and I'll have a link to that at the end of this slide deck, so stay tuned for how you can find out more. Okay, next we have some enhancement to experiences, formerly known as communities. Starting with sites. So new Lightning Web Runtime sites are in enhanced sites only going forward. So you used to be able to opt out of this once you'd configure one and say don't use the enhanced runtime, but no more. Lightning Web Runtime sites support more language translations. This is up to 25 from 10. And you can now display more knowledge fields in the search results for, again, Lightning Web Runtime sites, which you configure via search layouts, so much the same as you configure what appears in other search results. The actions bar component for Lightning Web Runtime sites is now generally available. So this allows site users to create and update records directly from your LWR site. This component supports the edit standard action, create and update a record quick actions, and headless Lightning component quick actions if you want to create your own. The record detail component is also GA for LWR sites, which allows you to view and edit records directly in the site, but note that users will see the page layout that is assigned to their profile when they do that. And finally, and the reason why this slide couldn't be called LWR sites, there is a change to Aura sites. And that's quick actions on related lists are now supported in Aura sites. These appear in the related lists single component, or if the user clicks view all in the related list record, sorry, the related record list component. You can now disable the Experience Cloud CDN, the Content Delivery Network, for enhanced domains if you need to. Not really sure why you'd need to, but I guess if you've got a good reason for that, you would do it, but you can test the impact first before you ask Salesforce to disable it in production as part of the Winter 24 release. When you enable enhanced domains, Salesforce redirects users from your old force.com site URLs to the new my.site.com URLs. And you can now add an alert to tell users that this is happening, giving them details of the new URL before they're redirected. So if they've bookmarked the old one, they know to update that. And you can now respond to chatter email notifications from a device using iOS 16 or later without it erroring, which was what was happening previously. Moving on to our next topic, which is mobile. So as mentioned earlier, dynamic forms are now GA in the mobile application. As of the version of the mobile app being released on October the 16th, so just under a week, you'll be able to share reports with other users from your mobile device for both iOS and Android. You simply open the report, tap the three dots to see the options, and then tap the share option. And in the mobile app plus, so that's the one that supports offline but is an additional license cost, there's some mostly off, yeah, I think they're all offline actually, new capabilities. You can search your briefcase for records, regardless of whether you're on or offline. The offline landing page now supports Lightning swipe action on contacts. You can attach images to records while you're offline. And for developers, the confusingly named offline app onboarding wizard is generally available, which simplifies the initial setup for developers who are looking to build offline functionality. So offline onboarding is GA. Moving on to Sales Cloud. You can now track and audit changes to splits and teams, opportunity splits and teams, to ensure that everyone is being appropriately compensated and no one's pulling a fast one. So as you can see from the screen grab here, this shows who made the change around the splits, when they did it, and what the previous and current values are. This was an idea exchange suggested feature, so one which was voted on by the community, and Salesforce decided to do it for us, which is nice. Okay, so contact lead intelligence view. So this is a new intelligence view for contacts and leads on the record homepage. So you can click the intelligence view button to pull up the intelligence view and see the records that need attention. And when you're done with dealing with these records, you can click the list view to return to the regular list views. And as you can see, it's all very much around activities. So the total contacts, the number that have no activity, the number that are idle, the number that have no oncoming, overdue, due today, etc. So it's all around that, but this is a way of finding out all that information in a single view rather than having to figure it out from list views. The activities to-do list helps you to focus more on the important tasks with new filtering capability. So you click on the filtering button, choose the criteria, then you pick a sort button. So at that point in time, you've gone through and you've configured a few bits and pieces. There's a few bits to this, so we move on to the next page, and then we look at the search button on the to-do list. This has also been improved. So as you type into the search field, as you type information in there as to what you want to look for, what it will do is it will start suggesting labels and filters to enable you to kind of drill into your to-do list. So if you're using your activity, again, an activity feature, you're using your to-do list to help manage your activities, you've got a bit more granularity and a bit more ability to sort and filter that. Pipeline inspection page has also received a few changes. The filter design, which you can see marked with a 1 here towards the middle of the page. Hopefully, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but hopefully you can. So basically, this has been repositioned, and the field marked with a 2 has been updated to make it clear which metrics you've selected. If you hover over an opportunity marked with a 3, you'll see the side panel icon, which you can click to open the sidebar, which is over here marked with a 4. So a few minor tweaks, but it should make it a more usable page. Pipeline inspection also allows you to see who is involved. So if you click the sidebar icon mentioned in the previous slide to open the side panel, you can then locate the who's involved section, click the button, click the view button, and then you can see the details about who's actually involved in this. Interesting that it went from 4 down to 2, so I'm guessing those screen grabs I had weren't grabbed at the same time. So another feature from an idea exchange post. So managers can now apply their judgment to forecasts if they have a different view to their direct reports. So this applies at the opportunity level, and the manager can indicate whether they feel that the opportunity should be in or out of this particular pipeline area, forecast, etc. So once they've looked at all the opportunities, they can then see their view in the committed forecast comments. So you can see you've got the adjustments, without adjustments, and then what does the manager actually think? So the manager looks like it's pulled about 8 million out of it, or 1 million, no, a couple of 100,000 actually out of the adjustments by Remedent. So this is a way of just allowing the manager to overlay their feelings and see how that matches with the individual's ideas. One thing to note here, this is the US spelling of judgment, so there isn't an E between the G and the M, and that keeps catching me out when I search for this topic. I kept thinking they pulled this particular piece of functionality because I was searching with the UK English variant. The opportunity list in the grid view of collaborative forecasts now includes the same information as pipeline inspections, so you'll no need to switch between the two so much. Users get visual indicators of changes and can hover over fields for more details, as well as additional inlight edit capabilities and Einstein insights. Much like pipeline inspection, the forecast page has been refreshed. So marked with a 1 towards the top here, there's an updated label for the forecast range. Marked with a 2, you can select the field to choose a different range. Marked with a 3, the updated icons make it a bit easier to navigate the page. And marked with a 4, when you hover over a field, it'll indicate which fields are clickable for more information. Email next. Features that previously required an add-on license are now included in Enterprise and Professional Edition for users with a Sales Cloud license. So this includes send later, email tracking, text shortcuts, and email engagement. So that's nice. So yeah, reduced cost if you've wanted that and you've never been able to afford it, now is your chance. And when accessing email logs, you can filter incoming, outgoing, both types of message, filter based on email events, and view more information about deliverability. So the email logs have improved, and it makes it a bit easier to drill down into the information you're actually interested in. Okay, moving on to Service Cloud. So starting with bots, the enhanced bots the audit functionality associated with those reviews key and configuration details and alerts you to anything that you've missed. So that should make your bots more effective when you finally put them live. There is enhanced bots can also present predefined choices for a user to respond with. So if you want to ask them, what are you trying to contact someone about today? Is it an issue? Is it a concern or comment, or is it to talk to a salesperson, etc.? You can, rather than them having to type them in and the bot having to figure it out, you can give them effectively a pick list and they'll choose which one they're interested in. There is a new buyer assistant sales template, and also a new block for adding case comments, closing or creating cases, or capturing a CSAT survey. The template and blocks are available for enhanced and standard bots. On the knowledge side, there's a new Lightning article editor. So this is enabled via a release update that will be released in spring 24, which should be next February. So this brings in accessible formatting, advanced table editing. It's a resizable error. You can copy and paste without losing formatting. Collapsible sections, accordions, which are collapsible sections for large articles, horizontal lines, quick text, and loads of other bits and pieces as well. And also included in this release update is article personalization, where you can have fields in a knowledge article that are conditionally displayed based on the user and their associated permissions. And a few other smaller changes on the Service Cloud. There's an enhanced quick text picker. So I don't know if anyone's used the regular quick text picker, but on the new one, on the enhanced one, if you click on the text, you can preview it. If you're searching, it'll include folders rather than just the text snippets, and you can access those folders using the scroll bar. And if you're using email to case and you're relying on the ref ID that's used to track that, that is changing. So if you have any custom code that relies on the format, you'll need to test it against the new format and maybe change it. You can see the format in the release notes. Test that in a sandbox before you go making any changes in production. And you can also add pre-chat terms and conditions so that customers know what they're getting into when they accept a chat with you. So that brings us to the end of the generally available features. And there's a few interesting beta features in this release, not as many as we've seen before. I think probably because a lot of the beta effort is going into generative AI. So first one is transferring ownership of Lightning dashboards via the change owner menu option. So this is aimed at managers who are transferring dashboards between their team members. It has to be enabled via the configuration item shown. It requires view my team's dashboard permission or view all data if you need to transfer it outside the team. And this is helpful if you've got a lever or something and you want to move some of those dashboards around. Something that many of us have been wanting for a number of years, an easy way to find out what's in a permission set. So the permission set summary page will allow you to see all enabled object, user, and field permissions in the permission set without having to click through each section, an object, etc., to find all those details. This is another idea exchange feature, and this one was posted in June 2012. So it feels like we've been quite patient in waiting for this, so it's nice to see that coming in. And I'm going to indulge myself on this one. There's a new VS Code extension in beta that will allow you to perform static code analysis on your Apex, Visualforce, and JavaScript code to look for pre-configured performance issues, security issues, and various other common issues that developers often encounter. So this will be direct from VS Code. You'll be able to run a scan on your code and it will pull out if there are any problems. So the scanners include PMD, which is kind of a bit of an industry standard, and this has been available for Apex for a while, along with the Force.com, Salesforce Graph Engine rather, and also retire.js for JavaScript. If you work for an ISV, you'll probably know all about these because these are the kind of things you have to scan your code with before doing security review. And once you run this, it will give you a report with details of any errors. And if you try this on a mature code base, you'll see an awful lot of errors, so give yourself a chance rather than hitting everything with this. If you're going to use this, then bring it in gradually if you've got a mature code base. Other items in beta in this release include the Lightning record picker. So this is a Lightning web component that allows you to search for and choose Salesforce records, and it uses the GraphQL API. The release notes say this works best in the field service app, but they don't explain why that is, so that's quite intriguing. I wonder why field service is so well suited to the use of that Lightning Web Component. With Lightning Web Security enabled, you can create custom elements in Lightning Web Components to use like regular HTML and also reuse third-party web components. So I think these are the first steps on saving us all having to recreate components that already exist elsewhere and allow us maybe to use more vanilla web components rather than having to roll our own Lightning Web Components all the time. And finally, there's a new Lightning email editor in town based on TinyMCE. So this has a number of nice features. TinyMCE, if you've never used it before, it's a nice little WYSIWYG editor that's very popular on websites. This is available as a release update, and it will be enabled in winter 24. So as usual, I haven't tried to cover everything. There's a release readiness page that goes into a lot more detail produced by Salesforce on all the areas, and you can also find the release notes at the short link shown, and of course there is a trailhead badge for us all to do, because it wouldn't be the same without a trailhead badge. Now, as mentioned earlier, our third Get AI Ready webinar is coming over the horizon 2 weeks today, so join me on the 25th of October from 4 to 5 p.m. to hear about all the announcements at Dreamforce and a few thoughts about what's currently in pilot or beta, and also I'll be going into some detail about how the Einstein trust layer works, which I was able to find out at Dreamforce as well. So that's very cool. So that brings me to the end of the prepared content. I'm going to leave this slide up so that everybody's got a chance to capture the information, to scan the QR code and to register. Be expecting to see those numbers going up straight away. But that does bring me to the end of the prepared content. So I'm going to go and look and see if we've got any questions. And it looks like we don't. Well, that's nice. That's good. So everything's all clear to everybody and they're all excited and ready to go on those new features. Well, that being the case, thanks very much for your time, everyone. Have a pleasant Wednesday evening if you're in the same time zone as me, or have a pleasant rest of the day or tomorrow if you're in a different time zone. Hope to see you all at the next webinar. And yeah, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.